And
All
let's do
right.
it.
Greetings, gamers, and welcome to episode 3 of Rested XP, the podcast about online gamers and their community, mental health, and relationships. My name is Turarts, and it is 1:07 on August 23rd, 2020, and that is Central Time. So if you're Eastern, you're about 2:07. Sidebar: today is my baby sister's 24th birthday, and I definitely called her at 6:30 in the morning to wish her a happy birthday. So she loves me a lot. But side note that one, some good news. Joining us this week, as always, from Warcraft Radio and podcasts such as For Azeroth, it's Manny. How are you doing?
I'm doing quite well. I had a somewhat busier day than I expected. Glad to be able to sit down and chat about life with some friends and with the chat room. So this seems perfectly timed for me.
Wonderful. And the usual talkative chap who's taken a back seat this week to let me host, it is Shark You. How are you doing, hun?
I'll do my best. I'll probably still run you guys over, but it's what I do. It's my brand at this point. I'm doing great. I start school tomorrow,
Ooh.
so I'm gonna be. And I found out this was interesting. I didn't know this, that according to the APA, American Psychological Association, and all the accreditation for clinicians and therapists and stuff, as soon as I walk into grad school, start taking classes, I am required. I have to. I'm bound by all the standards of the APA and the different clinical groups. So I have to buy insurance so people won't sue me and become part of the union. Just in case I say something crazy. So hopefully I'm not going to say anything crazy.
Those are some big steps.
Yeah, this show
are.
is definitely giving me the opportunity to say something crazy and I guess open up potential lawsuits. So I'm just going to kindly ask our listeners not to open up a lawsuit so my insurance doesn't go up. That'd be great.
Well, before we get into the meat of the topic, I would just like to remind you to check out our Twitter and our Discord. Our Twitter is RestedXPcast, and our Discord, I'm sure we have a link somewhere. Well, I know we have it on our Twitter for sure. I don't know
Yep.
if we have it in the show as well, but go ahead and join us there. All kinds of exciting, fun
It's
things as we still.
I was going to say it's posted on our Twitter. It's also posted on a button you can click on our Twitch page if you want to check that out.
There we go. Is on our Twitch page as well. But yeah, go ahead and check us out. And then, of course, you can join us live every Sunday at 1 Central. I'm going to have to get used to using the Eastern time as well, but 2 Eastern at twitch.tv/RestedXPcast. Now, today's topic is a little bit on the heavier side. So before we get into it, we're going to have a fun icebreaker, which neither Manny nor Shark you know anything about because I did this all on my own and I didn't put it in the show notes on purpose. So I'm sure all of you have played this at one point in time. Put a finger down. We're keeping it clean because obviously we're keeping it clean. And we're not going to do, if you want to make this drinking, you can, but we're not going to do that. So 10 fingers up. This is kind of a gamer edition. So we're going to start. Put a finger down if you have ever used internet or computer issues that didn't really exist to get out of playing a game or a commitment.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've
I was
definitely
on a
done that.
very toxic raid team at one point in time and scared to say no. So, oh no, internet's out.
So what you're saying is I can't leave my middle finger up as the last one?
No,
Is that...
you should try to put that one down.
Oh, man. Okay.
I promise these are going to get a lot not as heavy. This one's a little heavy, but put a finger down if you've lied about your gender, age, race, etc. on a video game. Maybe that's a girl thing.
I don't think I have
Oh,
on
yeah.
a video game.
Put a finger down if you have had a noob moment way past the point you should have had that noob moment. For example, I did not know the Dark Moonfair portal existed until quite recently, even though I should have known. I've been flying my happy butt to the Stormwind every time.
Yep.
When you could just talk to this person in major cities.
My finger's down.
So, new moment. Put a finger down if you have logged into the game to do X only to get distracted by other things, spend hours doing those other things, log off feeling accomplished, realizing you never actually accomplished X.
Yep. Is this game just everyone put their fingers down?
No, I only the last two I've hit.
Yeah.
Oh,
The
really?
last two. Yeah. Put a finger down if you met a friend or significant other through video games.
Yep.
Put a finger down if you have skipped the walkthrough tutorial thinking that you could figure this out on your own, only realized 10 minutes later you barely know how to walk, so you sulk back to the walkthrough to figure out how to actually play this game. I'm way too confident and cocky for how bad I am at video games.
I feel like I've done
I'm just
that.
worse. Like I'm just like, I'm not going back. I'll just soldier through.
See,
I have gone this far.
I usually do it accidentally. I'll always go through the walkthrough, but I won't pay attention, so I'll have to go back through it.
Once I'm past the walkthrough, I'm like, screw it. No, I'm this deep in. I'm going.
Put a finger down if you fell asleep while playing a game. I actually haven't.
I don't think that's the first one I haven't done. Nope, I have. I can remember now. Yep, I have.
Put a finger down if you were stubborn about using an item because it ruined the spirit of the game. This might be me specific. My example, when heirlooms first came out, I refused to use them because I thought it was cheating. It made leveling too easy. This is not how WoW was supposed to be played. Eventually, I had to admit I was wrong.
Yeah. Map offerings and DBD. Cheese! Absolute cheese! Will not do it. Ops in Counter-Strike. No. One-shot sniping is cheap. There's something for every game. That I should take 2 fingers down for this.
I didn't. Yeah, I've never boycotted an item, but I definitely deleted all my legendaries immediately as soon as Legion was over. I remember doing that. I deleted every single one. Like a lot of people hold them in their bags. No, they're gone for me. Gone forever.
I still have all of them.
No,
You too.
absolutely not. Deleted them immediately. I was so mad.
Put a finger down if you haven't or didn't play a game that you really honestly think you would have liked and enjoyed, but it kind of sort of became a thing that you didn't play that game, so you didn't play it or still haven't played it.
Fortnite.
I now do play Fortnite, but for a long time I didn't.
I still haven't played it. I've wanted to. I've thought about it. I was going to stream my first playthrough, but I never did. I just haven't. It's too trendy.
Yeah. I mean, for the longest time, I didn't play D&D because I was like, hey, this is the one thing that'll stop me from being a complete nerd. And I eventually buckled. And then, of course, Rockstar and all those band games, I didn't play because there was a moment where my friends stopped playing games with me because I kind of... They called it mannying the game, where it stopped being fun.
Oh, God.
Put a finger down. I have 3 more. Put a finger down if there is a quest or a raid that all you have to do is say the name of it or see it, and you just can't help but smile because it has good memories.
Sure, I guess.
I love ICC. It was my first raid, so all you have to do is say ICC. I'm like, oh, I remember that one. Put a finger down. This is not WoW specific necessarily. If you have ever switched sides or factions in a game because the side you were on made you mad and you noped out of it.
I'm out.
Back when I played Fable, you had decisions that you would make, and I would make one and be like, nope, back to the last save point where I'm doing this one.
Yep.
Now this one, I don't know. Maybe you'll put a finger down. Maybe this has happened to you. So put a finger down if you were in a guild that was with your ex, his best friend, some married couples and randoms. Your ex's best friend started crushing on one of the married women who returned the interest. So on raid nights when the husband wasn't there, it was super awkward. This went on for months until they decided to get married in-game. So they hosted a wedding in-game with dresses, suits, flowers, rings, the whole shebang. Your ex performed the wedding while you ended up being the maid of honor because you're way too invested at this point to actually say no. You need to see how this cluster plays out. You end up ripping off a speech from something online because you can't take this serious enough to actually write a speech. You can hear your ex's best friend crying because he's also your roommate in the next room as this is happening because he's found the love of his life. There's even a reception. They keep their rings equipped at all times except for raid nights, even when the husband's around.
Yeah, that happened to me.
That's oddly specific. I feel really
so specific.
The raid the guild ended up disbanding about 3 months later because the husband found out. So.
Were we in the same guild? No.
That was a fun time. Yeah.
That sounds
so
uncomfortable.
Weird. It was awkward. But I was like, at this point, we'd watched it go on for so long. And none of them, I think, even played. This is like a decade ago. We watched it go on for so long that, of course, you're attending the wedding. There was a reception where they were giving toast. We were all already so drunk because what is happening even at this point? Like, you couldn't back out. You had to see how this played out. So
It was just RP.
That's when the jilted lover has faction changed to the alliance and raids the wedding with his with his entire guild.
Shut up.
Perfect.
It was so awkward. So awkward. But yeah, I guess that might just be a me thing. So put a
Wow.
finger down, Gamer Edition. Got to know a little bit more about us. I think Manny had the most fingers up, so you win. I don't know what.
Yeah, many
Yay.
wins. Many wins.
The wedding
I don't know.
was in Stormwind in front of the cathedral. We were Alliance, so it was there, and then the reception was out like at the lakes that behind the cathedral. It was a weird night. I do not recommend.
It's going to be frustrating because if Hannah and I get married, we're going to have to plan 2 weddings, in RL and in game. So it's going to be a lot of work. I feel like.
I mean, you could just send the wedding pictures onto the Discord. People will love it, and then you don't have to do the double planning.
Live stream it.
But we could live stream it.
Yeah, that's something.
Just gonna throw that out there.
Yeah, if some of your people are in Discord and just stream it, that'd be wonderful. And then,
but that's assuming I get over my fear of commitment. So I think we're safe for a minute. Yeah.
yeah, we're gonna start like getting episodes put fear of commitment, how to plan a wedding. Just like, why do these keep getting put to the top?
Hannah wants to have it at the World's End Tavern.
Nice.
So I guess the planning's done.
All right. Well, it's kind of some fun. Before we head into our main topic, which is a little bit heavier today, and personal for me, PTSD and living with it as someone who has it. I do have it. I've talked about it. If you follow me on Twitter, occasionally, so I think it's actually a lot more lately than I used to, but I do talk about it. Today we're going to talk about what PTSD is, what it can mean, things you can do, stuff like that. I am going to start this off with, none of us are like healthcare professionals yet, in the sense that any advice we give, anything we talk about is all personal experiences. Even me living with it and years of therapy and things like that, this is just my opinions, my experience. So please seek help. My DMs are always open, but this is so personal for each person that what I do go through, how I cope with it, may not work for you and may actually trigger you. So this is just a conversation. But as always, feel free to add to it. We're going to start off with Manny and Sharku. So PTSD, when you hear that, what does that make you think of? What do you think PTSD is? Because to my knowledge, I don't think either of you, when we talked about this, said that you have PTSD.
No, not to my knowledge.
Yeah, so very frankly, I'm going to be doing a lot of listening this episode because it is not something that I have dealt with. I've lived a very blessed life in that way. And for that reason, what I'm going to be talking about when I am talking about is an outside opinion, can be filled with just like misinformation that I've done. And so the important thing that I'm hoping that I get to represent is somebody who's willing to listen and learn today.
Manny's bowing out. We'll see you next week, Manny.
I will say, because we talked about this, we talk about things that you guys don't hear. And I love that he's staying on for that perspective, because I know I can kind of get caught up in my own stuff and be like, no, guys, this is what it is. So Manny's kind of be here, and you two, to kind of ask those questions that I might forget so we can talk about them.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you hear PTSD, I guess what comes to mind, or what definition do you think of? Or do you have anything? And you might not, and that's okay.
Well, for me, when I think of post-traumatic stress disorder, I think of somebody who has gone through obviously something traumatic, and it still has reverberations in their life. Elements that they come across in their life can have those sort of trigger effects where they are drawn back to that time, and at different levels will almost relive that experience, and that is completely disrailing to your normal life if it's not managed properly. So it is something that you have to manage. It's not something that one day you're like, oh, I'm done with it. It is something that can come back years later, have bad spells, have good spells, or even within the best day of your life, suddenly you're drawn back to the worst day in your life. And that's my image of PTSD.
And what about you?
Um, so, well, first of all, I'm not going to use their name, but I want to thank the listener that sent in an email about this topic. That I think it's really good that we're talking about it, but I just wanted to throw a little shout out to them. They know who they are. But so I've had a little bit of experience that I know of with PTSD. I had a friend of mine that well, we played football together in high school. We weren't like super close friends, but he lived like in the next neighborhood over, and I'd walk to his house sometimes and hang out. And we rode the bus together. But he went to the military after school, served in Iraq and Afghanistan, and suffered PTSD from that, and ended up uh, shooting his brother and dad, and then killing himself. Luckily, the brother and dad weren't killed, but this all happened at his sister's wedding, 10 years later. Um, and that action was attributed mostly to his PTSD and mental health. So so that's what I think when I hear PTSD. I usually automatically go to like military. I know it's really prevalent in folks that have served, especially active duty, and have witnessed traumatic events, lost friends, and was literally spending a large portion of their young life being shot at, um, and might have survived physically, but there's a lot of all that trauma builds up. So that's really what I think of. I think when I hear about PTSD, but yeah, like Manny said, like understanding the basics is you have a traumatic event that is difficult to overcome, I guess, and causes you to think differently or react differently in certain situations. I guess that's the best way I could put it. That's what I got.
Um, Also, a quick disclaimer: I know I'm going to be crying at some point during this, so just just a
We'll
heads
get
up.
there.
Um, but though, like, I guess I don't know what I expected, but those are really great examples
Hmm.
of what PTSD can be. Hannah in the chat, I think, brings up a good point. I know, um, for me personally, when I think of PTSD before I was actually diagnosed, immediately I go to war vets. I mean, they have been through something. In my head, they have a reason to have PTSD.
Hmm.
And despite what I've been through, I didn't feel like I had a reason to go through it, which is why I fought so long
Right.
before actually getting diagnosed and trying to, like, I've been seeking random cat. I've been seeking help and seeing a therapist since 2014, 2000. Yeah, I think it's been
Okay.
6 years now. But I was not technically diagnosed with PTSD until last fall. So it was a bit of a process, even though I have probably had it for a while now. So I think a lot of people, when they hear PTSD, they think of vets. That's where you see it most in society. Um, because, in my opinion, like most mental health issues, it's kind of brushed under the rug. And you can correct me if
Hmm.
I'm wrong, but I think it's kind of brushed under the rug. When we look at the actual definition, and this comes from a few different sites, but I like this one the best. This is Freedom Canine Project. A disorder caused by the involvement in or exposure to. And I think that's important. You don't necessarily have to be the one having the traumatic event. Sometimes just witnessing it, car crashes, watching someone be murdered, things like that can cause it.
Or watching someone
And
just die. Yeah.
yeah, in a normal situation, the brain will switch the body from survival mode to a state of restoration, but PTSD is when that switch never occurs. So you're constantly in that survival state of emergency, fight or flight, things like that. Um, it can happen immediately after the after effect. It can happen several years after the event. Um, and you know that it does bring up here that veterans who return home from PTSD suffer from the same disorder to the same severity as many victims who were abused in their own homes. So just because you went to
Hmm.
war and this is what I struggled with doesn't mean that it's any less or greater than what I went through.
Hmm.
Um, so there are several different things, but and I know for me, PTSD is definitely that constant fight or flight. So you're in this survival mode, this hyped up state. You can't calm down. And that is so exhausting being
Yeah.
in that state for so long. To go into just briefly about what my PTSD is triggered by, I have had sexual trauma on
Hmm.
different occasions, unfortunately. And one of which, for some reason, not that any of them were worse than the other, any type of sexual trauma is bad, triggers to where I feel as if the person is right there and it's all happening over and over again.
Yeah.
It used to just happen in what, as awful as it sounds, I would call stereotypical. So, like, I was laying in bed, getting ready to go to sleep. Um, that kind of in my head made sense why I would be triggered in that situation. Like,
Hmm.
you're in bed, it's dark, that sort of thing. Um, and I would deal with that. I would bury that down deep into the box and never think of it. And then it started happening when I was awake, when I was in the middle of cooking dinner, at the middle of my job, sitting here playing a video game or something. The sensation would strike. It would feel as if his hand was on my neck or something like that. And that is when I decided to seek help because although it was affecting my life before, I was kind of stubborn in the good old Midwestern, I'm fine, it's fine, everything's fine, bear it down deep.
Hmm.
And then I finally went to seek help. It doesn't have to be something like going to war, having sexual trauma, like we've said, watching someone die. Even if it is a peaceful, death,
Right.
watching your grandma die or something like that. It can be anything. So I want to start by saying, please don't feel if you think you have PTSD that because yours isn't as severe as someone else's that it's not severe.
Yeah.
You don't get to decide if it's affecting you, if it's impacting you, it's severe. It doesn't matter if that person was in a war where they watched their best friend die or someone was raped. Yours is affecting you. That makes it severe now.
And that's really important. I wanted to just kind of add in to drive that home. That's just something in mental health that people deal with a lot. They'll either over like what I this isn't necessarily PTSD related, but when I was struggling with depression, I would always, especially early on when I was in college, I would always think like nobody has it as bad as I do. Like I would think that I was isolated because my life is so terrible, and I would isolate myself. And then the other side of that is like what Turarts is saying about how you feel like yours isn't as bad. I don't deserve help. I don't deserve it because there are other people that need it more, or something like that. All of those thoughts are unhealthy thoughts. So if you're having those thoughts, you should try to use the intellect front part of your brain to override that and say, you know what, that's not a healthy thought. That's not necessarily true. Anybody needs help. All trauma is trauma. All mental health issues are mental health issues. There's no degree. There's no worse or less. It's if you're sick, you go to the doctor. It doesn't matter how sick you are. So anyway, sorry, I wanted to drive that home.
No, you're fine. Um, and then something else kind of sciencey I wanted to talk about because I saw on this website, it's freakedom9project.com, and just search PTSD.
Hmm.
This was one of the ways that my therapist explained it to me when I was coming to terms with the fact of how serious this was. And this is very simplified, so don't come at me, science people. I'm not a science person, so don't come at me, please. But you have three parts of your brain. So you have the part that's kind of what she called like the logical part. This is the decision making. This is where like your processing, your cognitive abilities are controlled. You have that one. Then you have this one right here, the middle one, and that is where like you have emotions. It's also where like sensory things happen. Your
Hmm.
last one over here, this is that survival one. This is the one where that fight or flight kicks in. So when you have, and I use the word normal because I hate using that word, like normal, how your brain's supposed to work, you go logic, emotions, and then if fight or flight needs to happen, you go to fight or flight. So you work from a like left to right sort of thing. When you're going through like a PTSD episode, you start over here. You're already at fight or flight. And then you go to emotions. So you're already in this hyped up
Hmm.
thing. Now we're going to go to emotions. And then you go to logic, which is going to be kind of screwed up a little bit because you're like, you already like fight or flight. You're hyped up there. You have emotions. You're hyped up there. Oh, now we're going to try and be logical about this. It's not, at least for me, that's not going to work. Like, it's not going to work 100%. So that was something when she was talking about when I have episodes, think about how I process information. So she's like, you're given Like a simple scenario was you're going to be short staffed at work. Logically, you'd be like, okay, this happens sometimes. People are sick. We need to cover other stations. Emotional, this sucks. It is what it is. I'm kind of upset. I'm going to have to work harder. Fight or flight, I don't really need to be in like a hyped up situation. We're just going to buckle down and get through it.
Mm-hmm.
But how I do, I automatically go to panic. Oh my God, we're short staffed. What are we going to do? They're pushing us to have more appointments. This isn't going to work out. So then emotionally, I'm upset. I'm not going to be able to do enough work. They're going to be behind. So now I'm at logic and I don't know how to logic this. Like we've already gotten emotional about it. I can't logic at this point. It was a very crappy example, but that's just
Well,
kind of how it worked.
no, it makes sense to me because, and then by the time you get to logic, logically, everything's the worst. Logically, what you're going to want to do is go home or give up or quit,
Yep.
right? And so it's a very different logical decision that you're making because of the way. Yeah, that makes sense to me. It's interesting.
It is. So the takeaway from this little part was just, yes, first thought is usually veterans. I think a lot of people when I talk about them, that's the first thing we kind of relate to is, oh, I know someone who's overseas that had it. And that's how you relate to things through your experiences. Keep doing that. I'm not saying don't do that. But because I feel like we live in a society where mental health is so hush-hushed, it's hard when you have it and you don't feel as if it's so severe or
Mm-hmm.
traumatic. We just bury it down deep. And that is not good at all. And I think we can say that with most things for life. I know we've talked about, with some of us have anxiety, depression, things like that. I'm a barrier. I don't know what you two are, if you two are barriers or not, but I bury that down deep and don't deal with it at
Oh
all.
yeah. Oh yeah. Definitely a barrier. Manny, what are you? Are you a barrier? Are you a?
No, I'm a fighter.
You're a
I like
fighter.
anytime somebody like bothers me at a certain point, I need to shut it down because I don't like I don't like walking away with like a chip on my shoulder. It's just like,
Mm-hmm.
no, listen, if this is an issue, I need to know if I'm ever going to step in a room with you again or not. So
It,
I like
that
I
checks
just
out.
yeah.
I was in the short time that I've known you, like any time we've ever had any sort of even minor disagreement, Manny's like right there, like, well, no, you're wrong, and here's why, and let's be clear on this. uh,
Um, I have had therapy before. Um, Again, people will always downplay their own reasons for it. For me, I was in what I thought was the most important relationship I had ever been in. Had a pretty crushing end to it. Like, I'm not going to be like, oh, it's mutual. No, it was not. I got canned, and then was in a very unhealthy living relationship. Uh, as like that relationship fell apart.
mm-hmm.
So for me, I actually took the time to find a professional to talk to, and that's what we keep saying on this show. Um, Regardless of what the problem is, if you can find somebody to talk it out, you're going to find a way to work through that. And because that happened in a point in my life where I was able to take the time to analyze how I deal with things, I think that I benefited by being able to apply that same sort of logic that my therapist taught me to a bunch of things, and it's allowed me to deal with a lot of things before they become buried down and then explode later on, which I will say I've been guilty of before.
Yeah.
So I want to throw just some statistics because people like statistics real quick. For America, about 3.5% of Americans will be diagnosed with PTSD. And it is usually a lifelong thing, which we've kind of talked about that a little bit. Like Annie said, it's not something where you wake up one day and you're like, okay, I'm better now. Triggers can happen at any time. Surprisingly, I was surprised by this. And this was a study done by CBC.ca. Canada actually has the highest rate of PTSD.
Hmm.
Worldwide, it tends to be around 7 to 8% have it. Um, and so, it is something where, not quite 1 out of every 10 people, but kind of close you meet will have it in some way, shape, or form. Um, how PTSD works usually is you have a trigger, you then loop into like fear, panic, shutdown, things like that. You then try to avoid it. You then, in your head, I don't want to say gaslight yourself, but you kind of, oh, that's not that big of a deal, push it away, don't get help, then you get triggered again. Then it
Mm-hmm.
just cycles. Um, so that is kind of the general simplified cycle of how things tend to go. And like I said, the trigger can be anything from a sound, a smell, the way the wind blows on you, or for me, that we can't figure out what the trigger is. So sometimes it's just your brain's popping up um, with how things are. Before we get into ways things can help, because I do want to kind of not be a Debbie Downer for this whole episode, and I know these two will kind of have some opinions about ways things can help. I usually, when I want to talk about real quick, when I go through things that I have done and things that have worked and stuff. For me personally, I have been through about 36 different medicine combinations
Mm-hmm.
in the 6 years to try and help with my depression, anxiety, and eventual PTSD. I have failed 36 different medicine combinations to try and control this. I have done crystal therapy, Reiki therapy, chakra cleansing. I have had people come in and sage clean my house to try and get rid of whatever evil spirits. I
Mm-hmm.
have turned to gods, deities, giant spaghetti monsters. I am not trying to downplay religion at all. It is something that is very important to me. But I have turned to all kinds of things to try and find help. I have done something that is very common with PTSD called EMDR, eye movement. I can't remember what it is, but it basically plays on the rapid eye movement stage that you have with sleep.
Mm-hmm.
You, I don't want to say get put into a trance, but you kind of get put into a trance and are forced to relive what you went through. I did that for several months with what seemed like some success, and then it didn't work. There are hundreds of methods out there. I have not found my combination, but that doesn't mean that you won't. So don't get discouraged if you start out and
Yeah.
don't find what works for you right away. This is a lifelong journey. And one thing I can tell you that I fail at epically, ask for help. And I don't just mean a therapist. Find a friend,
Mm-hmm.
your significant other, family, whoever it is, to talk to while you go through this. Being a single mom and going through a divorce while I was dealing with this was not easy. And I tried to do it all on my own because that's who I am. And I can tell you right now, I regret that decision every day because I made it so much harder on myself than I needed to. So please, if you feel that you have this, some of the signs are, the flashbacks we talked about, night bears, depression, a lot of depression signs, feeling as if you're unlovable, unworthy, avoidance signs, which are depression, like inability to sleep, things like that. Um, because of my trauma that I went through, hypersexuality or hyperarousal is a sign. I tried to cope with what happened to me through sex, and that was not healthy. Um, so if you are feeling any of these things, I don't want to say they're normal, but they are normal signs for PTSD, and you might need to see someone. Everyone's situation is going to be different. Everything you go through is going to be different from what I went through, but just taking that first step and talking to someone can help a lot. So before we move on to hopefully a little bit more lighter section of this, do either of you have anything to add to like what PTSD is or what you've seen people go through or anything that you've experienced?
Uh,
Well, I
Go ahead.
okay. I did want to share. We had a listener who wanted to share something, and I was holding it for this show. And so, much like you, this is a listener who is dealing with PTSD attacks, and this is something that happened to them decades earlier. It was a school shooting.
Mm.
That is something that happens, unfortunately, too frequently in the U.S. And it's something that not a lot of people realize when you think about PTSD, like that these are people who, in very formative years,
Yeah.
are now having to deal with this. So they confided in me. They talked about how it was very much life altering and traumatic, and they said that they would just be sitting around, and the littlest things could cause them to again fall back to that area because
Mm-hmm.
hey, like you're sitting down, you're like maybe snuggled up on a couch, and that position is close to being in a fetal position underneath a desk, right, or something along those lines, and that can take you from like a relaxing night right to a very traumatic point. So one thing that they said that they used is like, of course, like trying to control their breath to get them out from that elevated level, and
Mm-hmm.
then to bring them into the current position, they start going through and focusing on different things in the room where it's like, okay, webcam, blue light, uh, printer, right? And just focusing on that and finding things to sort of anchor them in the point that they're at now, rather than being dragged back to that point. And I thought that was like a very it's something I've even seen in like some television,
Hmm.
whether it's like fantasy or even something that is far more grounded, where like it is that moment and being brought back. And so I think just having those things where it's like, blowing bubbles or finding the smallest thing to focus on to like get your brain like on this train to be like, okay, bubbles floating up through in the water, or like a bird out the window and seeing that fly around, just to bring yourself back into reality, to switch from what you were saying, that flight or fight thing, to, hey, I'm watching this thing, and like let me be emotional about, oh, that's so calming, and that, or even being like, well, what color is that little ball that's rolling down the street, and getting your mind out of the flight or fight section. And so I thought that was something that
Yeah.
I really wanted to share, because like I don't have the experience, so having that sort of like exercise is, it's almost like seeing color for the first time. You don't think about it when you haven't experienced it.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally that resonates a lot with me, and I want to kind of also couple that with what Turarts was saying, as far as um, there are so many different treatments that you can use, that you can try, from medicine to therapy, a multitude of different types of therapy. Um, and I would say just keep working. Like, as if you're, whatever you're experiencing, and even folks out there that don't think that they need therapy, um, I'm of the opinion that everybody needs therapy, and it's not because, in the same way that everyone needs to go see a doctor every now and again, not because you're sick, but because we want to make sure you don't get sick. Everybody has work to do. There are three kind of pillars of human existence, which is physical, mental, and emotional, or spiritual. You know, you've got the physical. We have to stay physically fit. We have to keep healthy. We have to exercise. We have to eat right. We have to cure ourselves when we get diseases. Um, you've got the spiritual, which that answering those questions that we don't know, that we don't possibly have actual answers to, right? So you have to try and organize your worldview for those questions that don't have answers. And then the mental is also important. And I think that if we're not working on all three of those parts of us, that we're going to be out of balance, and we're going to be, have problems. So, but yeah, just keep, definitely do work. Definitely talk to a therapist, and keep trying, because, like Torrance was saying, a lot of times it seems like, oh, this isn't working. This isn't working. I've talked to my therapist about my depression before, and he's like, we could try to put you on medication, but I don't think that's going to work for you. And if there was a magic pill to cure depression, everyone would be taking it. There's just not. There are some medications that will work and will really help people, and you know, uh, and he keeps telling me, he's like, we can talk to a psychiatrist and try to go that route if you think. He's like, but from what I know about you, I don't know if that's good. I think it's more therapy stuff. But anyway, just keep trying whatever you need to help you out. And unfortunately, there's not a magic pill. So that's what I got. Let's talk about happier stuff.
Let's is so this is a gaming podcast, and it's kind of interesting because they're in our Discord, the topical discussion. Sharky posted a link that I actually already had in our show notes about how gaming can help with
Yeah, I was reading it and I'm
PTSD.
like, oh, we need to put that in the Discord. So check that out, guys.
And this is a veterans, so it does deal more with vets dealing with PTSD, but there is a lot of crossover, because the way that their brain is working with those triggers is the same as, if you didn't have a going over war or PTSD moment. And I think, and you guys can absolutely correct me, a lot of these things I'm going to talk about, and then you guys definitely add to it, help with depression, anxiety, stress as well. The four big ones that they talked about was adaptive coping. So it helps us kind of cope with what's going on. It has sometimes the structure or maybe the freedom. Maybe we don't want the structure. We want something more open world like Animal Crossing or something like that. So it's definitely adaptive coping. It manages moods and relieves stress. And I think that's not just PTSD. That
Mm-hmm.
I think everyone plays video games for that aspect right there, managing mood or relieving stress for sure. Socializing. I know for me with PTSD, I shut down because I feel as though I should be able to handle life on my own and not need help. And that's not how life works, folks. You do
Mm-hmm.
need help. You do need people. We are social creatures. So video games for me is a way as, um, a single divorced mom with not a lot of spare time on her hands and, a global pandemic where I don't want to go out, even if I did want to go out, which I don't, it gives me that social aspect. And this one, and I actually am going to butcher it. It's called eudaimonia. It's a psychological term, which makes sense because I've never heard of it. But what it boils down to is in a game, you have good and evil, you have plots, you have timelines. It's structured. It is not open for interpretation a lot of the time. Even the twists and surprises, like, Sylvanas going crazy, it still makes sense. You have good, you have evil, you turn in this quest, you get this thing. And when you have a PTSD moment, all sense gets thrown out the window. Nothing makes sense.
Mm.
Everything's just crazy. So it is, and I've never heard of that term before, and I'm sorry for butchering it. So
I haven't learned that
psychological
one yet.
people.
When I
Perfect.
when I
So
when I come up on eudaimonia in my studies, we'll
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 get an
talk about that
education.
again. Yeah.
But I hate when people tell me video games, I'm using it as a distraction because distraction's used in a negative way. And I think when we have these mental health issues, sometimes the distraction is exactly what we need. Like your real life is not making sense right now, especially if you don't know what your triggers are. That this is a structured play system where you are relieving stress by whether it's in Fortnite, building things, shooting people, in WoW, picking herbs, where you can socialize if you want to, and A equals B equals C. That's how it works. So yes, it's a distraction, but I think that using distraction as a negative term isn't necessarily good or right in this
Mm-hmm.
situation.
Yeah, I would say that for in that way, when you are stuck in a loop, the video game helps you break that loop.
Yeah.
It also helps you focus on something. You're without even thinking about it, like, okay, I need to press this combo to shoot a fireball, or I need to like go to this place to like find a shortcut in the racetrack, and that lets you focus, creates a train of thought that isn't being easily derailed by like um triggered moment, and that seems like very natural a way to break it in like things that are like more general for video games. Yeah, there are times where even people who aren't dealing with a trigger moment still feel in a rut or in stuck in a place in their life, and maybe racking up some achievements on Xbox or PlayStation can allow you to feel a bit of an accomplishment. And
Yes.
then when you've accomplished that little thing, you can then build on that, accomplish some greater things, and break your way out of a rut. So I think video games can really help in in any kind of mental health.
Absolutely. I was clicking there. That's what we used to do at work. We'd have these meetings where there'd be a lot of people involved, and so rather than interrupting somebody, we snap our fingers when you agree. I can't agree with you more. Like, especially that sense of accomplishment. Me dealing with my depression is that's always something that I have to fight. Is I feel like I'm not accomplished anything. I'm worthless. I don't do anything. But I've experienced that where I'll play a video game and I still feel super shitty because I feel like I'm just sitting around playing video games all day. But I'll accomplish something. It'll give me a sense of accomplishment and worth. And then I'll be like, okay, now I need to vacuum my house or whatever, And it actually moves me to doing more. It's really cool. Yeah. I can say we can be PG-13. I can say one bad word as long as it's not the F word, Hannah. But
And
yeah,
okay.
go ahead.
I'm,
Sorry.
I know especially with veterans, and I think that's I don't want to say the easy, well, it is the easiest one to link video games to because like you were overseas, Call of Duty,
Right.
or like PUBG, like you can find these similarities and it puts them back in that situation, but with a different mindset. Well, it may help control PTSD. Whereas with my situation, what I've been through, you're really not going to find a video game where you like, that's not a thing. That shouldn't ever be a
I
thing
was gonna
either.
say,
Throw that out there.
Unfortunately
It
for
never
Grand
should
Theft
be a thing.
Auto.
if it is the thing, I'm
That,
gonna give
yeah,
Joe Lieberman
Yeah.
a call, and we're gonna shut
yeah.
it down.
Say Grand Theft Auto is a little on its own category, but this should never be a thing. So a lot of the studies when I was looking with video games and PTSD did have to do with veterans, and talking about, like you guys said, it gives you that sense of accomplishment. A lot of veterans said, like when you have Call of Duty, I always played zombie mode in Call of Duty. I know there's a main story. I've never played one. I always go straight for zombie mode. Let me kill these things. But Call of Duty, I have seen it played. You have these missions. You're going through like, all right, you have to get through these bunks and barracks, and then you have a guy that'll give you some more health packs, and now you're going into this build. Like, I get the general idea of it. There was a lot of studies that were done that said for someone who maybe was in a situation overseas where the outcome did not go the way it was supposed to be able to play this game and have the outcome go the
Well,
correct way or the way it was supposed to, well, helped them manage that PTSD. And just like everything, some people it did trigger. You're not going to have a perfect solution.
right.
Like we said, if there was a pill to cure depression, we would do it. So yes, for that specific type of PTSD, it's going to help in that way. For other things that you've been through, there should never be a video game about a school shooting ever. Never, ever should, and hopefully never will. So you
Already
may
has
not.
been.
Has that really? Gosh darn it!
Well,
I live a
they
sheltered life.
that it was
They took it from the store doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
it
and
was
it's
a
being traded
troll.
around.
Yeah, it was a troll, but it does exist.
Well, humanity, you have failed me today. Okay.
Well, in like it's not that a video game company said, "Hey, this would be a good idea." It was literally trolls being jerks saying, "This is a terrible idea. Let's do it
And
to
we
piss
can make
everybody
money
off."
off of it.
Right. So
People.
in defense of the industry, I don't think there's anybody out there going, "This sounds like a fun game."
Disappointed, but we'll move past. Gosh darn it. Anyway,
yeah.
I guess my general point will be you may not find a game to fit your situation, but gaming can link to more positive thoughts and ideas
Yeah.
and memories. And something that I am working on with my personal therapy is we may not be able to relive and replace those memories, but if we can bank more positive memories, more positive things, that when you do get caught in this loop, you can break the loop sooner by recalling or submersing yourself into a positive experience or positive memory. So
I do want to add on that, where if you're playing or intaking media in any way that might trigger you, and what I mean by triggered is people use triggered in a lot of different ways. Specifically here, I'm talking about triggering your PTSD response, right? So if you had, if you know that you're going to be engaging in something that could be triggering, try to make sure that you are in a healthy and safe environment. Be around people that care about you. Do like a lot of these tests and stuff that people do, especially when they start working with these video games, they're doing it with their therapist there, as part of their therapy and things like that. So if you know that if you, for example, were a veteran, have PTSD from active combat, I don't know if I'd necessarily recommend going out and buying Call of Duty and playing it at home in the dark alone. Does that make sense? Just try to be aware of those sorts of things. Because what really helps is being in that safe environment and using these positive things. And then once you get used to it, it's something that you can do more. But yeah, that's just my trigger warning, if you will.
Yeah, and I do want to say that having people around you, even if it's not a professional, just people
right,
that
yeah.
you are comfortable with, that you trust, friends, loved ones, like just that helps ground you. Like to have somebody there that like you feel safe around, and that could be what you focus on. It keeps you anchored sometimes, but beyond anything else, it's that PTSD is a hyper level of something that we all deal with. We all deal with some level of trauma. This is just like the trauma that will not that never truly goes away, or it keeps coming back. So in that way, like, I don't want people to think that if they are going through episodes, that it is something that is particularly wrong with them.
Hmm.
It is an elevated level of something that everybody deals with, and
Right.
the same exercises of like touch for things, look at four things, smell two things, going through and doing a countdown can
Mindfulness.
be
Yeah.
mindfulness can help everybody. So like even if you may not think you're fully at PTSD, and if you are even question that, do try and seek help, because the best way you can deal with something is knowing about it. But the stuff that Turarts is sharing today is something that we can all use just in moments of stress to center ourselves and move forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that, yeah, that kind of leads me to like my next point is like things you can do to help, or things that I've done to help myself, both as someone who has it or someone who knows someone who has it. The first thing, most importantly, and is patience.
Hmm.
Patience with yourself, because like Manny just pointed out, this is not something wrong with you. Everyone has trauma, um, and just like everything in life, what works for someone else isn't going to work for you. How someone else processes that trauma is different than how you might process your trauma.
Right.
So like have patience with yourself and understanding that you're not like broken, you're not the misfit, the like reject model or anything like that. It's just your brain works a little different. Everyone's brain is different. It is.
Hmm.
Um, and then if you know someone who does have PTSD, just having patience with them. Like I said, I was technically diagnosed a year ago, and I still try and shove it down deep, even though people know I have it, and they can kind of tell when my moods have changed in a way where they're pretty sure I've probably had an episode recently or I'm going
Hmm.
through one, and I still don't ask for help and open up or things like that. So just having patience with that person, because they're processing it, they're still trying to understand it and work through it. And although it's very easy to say ask for help, it's a very hard thing to do. Which leads me to my second thing, ask for help, which I know I just went on a spiel about how hard that is.
Yeah.
But ask for help. Uh, Sometimes you can't afford a therapist, you don't have insurance. There are great free resources online, but even just having a friend just to be like, hey, something happened. You don't need to go into details like I have. Just something happened. I just really need someone right now. Let's go play Mario Kart or whatever it is. Can be so beneficial. And both of you have talked about the mindfulness. The mine is 5 things I can see, 4 things I can touch, 3 things I can hear, 2 things I can smell, 1 thing I can taste. So just doing that, or finding the color and seeing how
Hmm.
many things you can find of that color, is another one that I've been told to do. Do you guys have any suggestions? I know, we talked about, we've been in situations where we've either ourselves or know people who've dealt with traumatic or depression or stress.
Mindfulness is huge. There, I can't remember the name of it. There's a YouTube, not YouTube, Netflix television show about the mind. I can't remember exactly what the name of it is, but there was an episode on mindfulness where they talked to a Buddhist monk who's like a special, like the world specialist in mindfulness, and he's brilliant. And so meditation is something that can be really cool. And when he talks about meditation, he doesn't talk about, people think about meditation, they think about emptying your mind and going to this Zen place and where you're all, that can be part of it. And for a lot of people, that's kind of the goal, but he's like, that's not meditation. We should be meditating all the time. What meditating is just knowing our surroundings and being aware of ourselves and everything around us. So if you try to meditate and you're trying to quiet your mind, and all of a sudden you have this thought, oh, I need to call this person, it's not that you should be pushing that thought away. It's that you should say, oh, okay, there's that thought. Being aware of it. It's about awareness. It's about being mindful, the whole point of mindfulness. And that can really help in a lot of these situations. But like, we constantly want to say, oh, I'm not meditating right. And this, something that just stuck with me forever, is like, there's no wrong way to meditate.
Yeah,
Meditation is
and
literally about being aware. So as long as you're aware, you're doing it right. If you're aware of these thoughts in your minds, just be aware with them. Be aware of them and continue to be aware of them until they leave, because it's almost like how to treat unwanted guests. You know, you just kind of ignore them until they leave. Eventually, they will.
I like that. I like that analogy of unwanted guests,
Yeah.
and I want to also emphasize that as unwanted guests, like you may ask unwanted guests to leave, but they might not leave when you want them to.
Or
And the
they'll push
same thing
back
with
harder.
these, or they'll push back harder. That's
Yeah.
true. You don't know how what it is. You just need to know that it is not something that is part of your preferred state. And like, yes, that's the mindfulness. Like, but again, it's the same thing with asking for help. Like you can know on a intellectual level, like I want help and I should seek help, but like you will have episodes that are worse than others. And it's not
Hmm.
necessarily that you're going to be on a straight trajectory.
Yeah. Oh, this
There
one
will
wasn't
be
that bad.
dips and valleys. There will be high points, and there will be times
Right.
where like you think you're like handling it better than ever, and then you just have like a bad experience, and you have to allow for yourself to like not be dissuaded by like anytime you have a setback, no matter how severe it as we've been saying the entire or we as these two have been saying the entire time, it is a lifelong journey. It is
Hmm.
something that the average you hope will get better, but it's not something that you will instantly be able to solve. And then on that same thing, saying magic pill, some people are able to take some medication and live their life with it mostly handled.
Hmm.
And for those people, it means that your life as it is allows you something in its makeup that gives you either evades triggers or allows you to deal with the triggers, and that's great for your life. For other people, you may not be able to avoid the triggers as well because of what those triggers are or because of the environment you're in. It's
Hmm.
just you need to be able to understand that there are some things about this that are just going to be out of your control, and you need to focus on what you can control
Yeah.
and not blame yourself for the things that are out of your control in this and any of the mental wellness things that we're going to be talking about in the future.
Work it. Don't avoid it.
Yeah.
Is a big thing.
And that's my 2 cents for this.
Yeah.
I say, like we've said several times, this is definitely a lifelong journey. Over my years of therapy and all this, I have tried so many things to try and help. Um, and I have been on the verge of giving up, and I haven't. If you feel as if you are on that verge, though, there are suicide hotline numbers, all sorts of resources and things. So please, if it gets to that point, and I have been at that point, do not be afraid to reach out. If you are not ready to seek help yet, because sometimes people just aren't.
Yeah.
Um, at least if you get to that point of helplessness or hopelessness, or as if it is never going to go away, please use the resources that are out there.
Well, and I want to be clear too that one of the reasons for this show was establishing a community of support. And so I also want to be very clear that if you're out there listening to this right now and you think that you don't have anyone to reach out to and you just can't try to, you can reach out to any of us privately through our Twitters or through the email, which we'll get to in a second, but I'll go ahead and say it now, restedxpcast@gmail.com. Um, our Discord server has a section in there for folks that need support that you can, if you're willing to be a little more public and want to reach out to the community and do that. But feel free to email us, DM me, or the show in Discord or Twitter. I, I'll help you find a phone number for you to call. I'll help you get in contact. I'm that's my promise to our listeners right now. Like if you need help, I I'll do everything I can to do it. I would be honored, and I'm sure my other co-hosts and staff on the show would also be honored to do anything they can to help you. So don't think you're out there alone. Don't think you don't have someone to talk to, even though you may not know us personally. We don't know you personally. I'm absolutely available to help in any way I can.
And I'm going to ask for closing thoughts on these two in just a second, but real quick, and I feel so selfish that I've talked so much, and I know this was my show and that was the point of it. I know that was, but that's just me.
That sounds like
I know
PTSD.
I know it is. Um, I know, like we've talked about, PTSD is a lifelong journey, and it is. You are going to have good days. You're going to have weeks, months, maybe even years, and then all of a sudden it's going to take a step back and just try to find things that work for you. I know the one guaranteed thing that will make me happy no matter what, and it is so bad, is hot French fries, like 100%. Like going
Mm,
to McDonald's or Wendy's, or there's a bar up the street that has these amazing tater tots. Those will make me feel better, and it might just be for 5 minutes, but that's all I need to get grounded enough to then realize, okay, you're here right now. You are not there. So even just finding one little itty bitty thing that can take your mind off of it or ground you for a second can allow you that break in the cycle to breathe, that you can then
hmm
use whatever steps or tools or tricks that your therapist or your friends or your research online has given you to help you get through this. Um, and like I said, it's we were supposed to do the show last week, um, but I was out of power, so we did not do the show last week because of that. Last Saturday was a really low point for me, because I did have a major trigger after a while with no idea or reason why. It just happened, and
hmm
I still don't know why. Um, and I failed at using my tools and tips and tricks that I'm supposed to have, and did get to that low point of suicidalness that I
hmm
also haven't been to in a very long time. So if you have had this happen, the reason I'm saying this isn't to end this on a bad note, but I just feel like people feel like they're alone in these situations where they do so good for so long, like you're on that diet or you've exercised every day and then you take a step back, like that happens. It just does. And it's okay, but the point is to try to keep fighting and keep pushing forward and keep moving on, even if it's something little like french fries that just gets you through that minute, and 1 minute becomes two and it becomes 10, and now you're an hour or 24, and slowly you start to find the things again that are why you should be here. So
Yeah.
it is lifelong, it is hard, but you will find things, and it will start to become manageable and livable. So on that, do either of you have any final thoughts on PTSD, how video games can help, things to do to help, or anything like that?
We've.
Sharky, I'll let you go first.
I was going to say we've covered a lot. I feel like I've pretty much said everything, except for I would. I think depression and suicide is going to be a topic that we talk about in the future for sure.
That's why I ended the show,
So
because I feel like we would have derailed
yeah,
our
exactly.
talk.
No, we would have exactly. But yeah, yeah. No, good work. I learned a lot this week, and I think this is a very helpful discussion for me personally. So thank you.
So I guess I want to close by saying that in these moments, always remember that you are not alone.
Hmm
It doesn't matter what it is. There are people who care. That if you reach out, they will, and people who are trying to reach out to you. Last week, when everything was happening, I had somebody from New Zealand contact me specifically to say, "Hey, can you reach out to Turarts? I think she's going through something." Across the world, people are saying,
Yeah.
"Listen, reach out to Turarts. I'm a fan of your show. This woman is wonderful, and I think she's having a hard time." And I want to thank that person. I'm not going to mention your name because yeah, like as you just said, you were having a low moment, but you may not have realized that around the world people care about you, and please remember that.
And that's not I did not expect that. I know one friend of mine reached out to me, and it was when I just had gotten my son back, so I wasn't trying to blow him off or anything. I was like, oh, I just got Miles back from sea for a week, so I was responding. Um, but that means a lot. And again, this could be another topic for another time. I stepped away from a community I was involved in a very public way, and because of that, have had my world turned upside down as far as the communities I'm in. Some death threats and things like that, things I never thought I would happen. And so I know I have pulled back completely, feeling as though I'm unwanted from all communities because of what I did. Um, and so that means a lot. But yeah, there are people who care. And like I said, I'm bad about asking for help. I feel as if I need to take on my own burden, and I'm working on that a lot. Not very well, but I'm working on it. So just again, know that you aren't alone is the biggest thing. I love that when everyone says that you're not alone, because you really aren't. I mean, if you're listening to this podcast right now, there's a community there. Um, And I know this week we talked more about personal with me, what it's like living. Um, I also have a dad who was a veteran and has PTSD. So in a future episode, we're going to talk more about what it's like living with someone who has it, and things that you can do that are helpful and maybe not helpful, and that situation, because that is a whole different ballpark, living with someone who has it. And
Yeah.
and I'm excited for these two, because I know for me, now that I'm older, I can relate to my dad more. So how I interact now is very different than when I was 18 and was like, oh, he's just kind of throwing a fit tantrum. So I'm excited for you two for for this topic at a later date. So that is something we will touch base on. Otherwise, I think that's going to do it for us. Any last minute comments? All right. Well,
That's it.
we would love to hear any feedback you might have about this show or any of our shows. And we also love to hear any questions or requests for topics you have. This is a new show, but as we start to hear from our listeners, we would love to plan our shows around you and what you would love to talk about. So we will have answers for questions and things like that. As we mentioned before, Twitter is at RestedXPcast. You can tweet us or DM us there. You can also send us an email, restedxpcast@gmail.com. If you like this show, please consider supporting it by going to patreon.com/restedxpcast. If you haven't noticed, guys, we keep it simple here. Everything is Rested XP Cast, so you can find us quite easily on everything.
Yep.
Becoming a patron is easy. Go to that website there, and your support means so much to us that we can even give gratitude in words for it. All right, I think that is going to do it. You can follow or find our show on iTunes, Google Play, all the usual things, and leave us a 5-star review. If you've left us a 5-star review somewhere other than iTunes and want to let us know, you can do it in Discord or by emailing us. We appreciate all the support. Manny, Shark, you, anything that you would like to pimp out that you are doing this week on your other stuffs?
Feel free to check out Merely a Setback. We've been away for a while, but hopefully we'll be back this week. You can check us out at setbackpodcast.com.
Well,
That's
for
what I
me,
got.
you can find my other two shows over on warcraftradio.com. So if you want to hear me talking about World of Warcraft, you can find me on For Azeroth with the lovely Jocelyn Kearney. Or I just finished my first show as one of the rotating cast of Rolling Restart with Ro, and both of those can be found on warcraftradio.com. I also just had a nice guest appearance with John Jagger and Ben Bumhofer over on Azeroth
I
Roundtable.
love those
Really
guys.
great discussion. Got spirited and fun. I love those guys. So I'm looking forward to like having more discussions with them. So check that out. That is Azeroth Roundtable. And that is it for me for now. There's more stuff coming in September, but we'll talk about it then.
For me, because it's been announced publicly in the Discord server, I am helping Con Before the Storm. I have come on as a member of their staff, and this year we are doing some virtual things since BlizzCon obviously isn't
We have
happening.
a Con Before the Storm staffer on our show? What? We made it.
It's me. So yeah, if you have, I have helped with the CTR virtual side of things for the 4 however many years that we did that. So I do have experience, but I've never actually been to a con before the storm. So I am definitely would love any input you guys have about things you liked or things you think would work well for a virtual con before the storm. I'm working really hard with Zia and Seraphis, though. I think we have some great things in the works. But that is my exciting news, is I am now on the staff of Con Before the Storm, and there will be something. What that is, I can't say yet, but I promise you we are doing everything we can to make it as wonderful, community driven as it is when you guys are there in person at BlizzCon.
And if you guys don't know what Con Before the Storm is, it's like a little event that podcast. It started as like a podcast group, but it's just all sorts of content creators and stuff that meet the day before BlizzCon, which is the convention for World of Warcraft and StarCraft and Overwatch and all that stuff. So yeah, definitely check it out. It's super cool, especially if you're interested in those games. I've been involved with it in the past. It's really awesome. It's so cool that Turarts is part of it this year. So yeah, I can't wait for that.
All right. Well, that is going to do it for us. We will be back next week, August 30th, if I can math right, because I did not put the calendar up like I should have. But we'll
You
be
are
back
correct.
next perfect August 30th at 2 Eastern Time. And as always, be good to one another.
Yay! All right.
Sharku, you're